Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. It is the most magical night of the year. Today, it's our end of year award ceremony, the Golden MTGies. But a ceremony this important, I can't host alone. As always, I'm joined by my glamorous co-host, James. James, how are you this wonderful evening?
I'm feeling very glamorous, of course. We've it's our most glamorous night of the year, so of course we've got the tuxedos out. My tuxedo is made of sequins, and for extra glamour. It's going to be a phenomenal evening.
It is. It is truly the most magical night of the year. We'd just like to thank the Academy, and by the Academy, I mean thank you all very much for listening, and to all those who filled in the voting form. The Academy would be nothing without you. I would just like to thank everyone who's been listening to the podcast over the past year for your support. It means the world to both myself and James. But I think let's take it away with our first award. We have a big one up first, James. Let's talk about Best Set. So, Zendikar, Innistrad, Khans of Tarkir, legendary sets that have stood the test of time. Which set from 2024 will join these lofty heights? Here is the award for Set of the Year.
So for the contenders, as is the case with Magic Now, we've released a lot of sets. So the contenders we had for this year were Ravnica Remastered. It was a Arena-only thing, I believe. Oh no, that was a paper set. Yeah, that was a long time ago, Ravnica Remastered.
We drafted that, James, I think.
We drafted a lot of things, Dan. We drafted a lot of things.
Yeah.
We have Ravnica Remastered. We have Murders at Karlov Manor. We have the Fallout set. We have Outlaws of Thunder Junction for all the good cowboy-based goodness. We have Modern Horizons 3, Assassin's Creed, Bloomvrow, Duskmorn, House of Horror, and finally, Foundations.
And the award goes to Modern Horizons 3. I don't think that's a massive surprise. I think in terms of impact and just in terms of most impactful cards of the year, I do think Modern Horizons 3 definitely has it. It did definitely feel they found a bit more of a sweet spot with Modern Horizons 3. I mean, yes, there are some obvious outliers in terms of power level, which we'll definitely get onto later on with some of our other awards. But I think in generally as a set, Modern Horizons 3, for the most part, did kind of thread that needle of what we kind of want from Modern Horizons in terms of there's some cool throwback cards, there are some powerful cards, and just like there was, especially for Cube anyway, there was a lot of support for cool archetypes within it and kind of like cool new role players. And yeah, I can definitely see why Modern Horizons 3 took it down. James, what did you think about Modern Horizons 3? Do you think it deserved Set of the Year?
I think for Cube, it was a really cool set. In terms of looking at the broader ideas of what the Modern Horizons sets are trying to achieve, I think it was a great thing for Modern, as seen by probably banned and restricted announcements since. I suspect if we asked primarily Modern players what for their opinions on Modern Horizons 3, it might be a bit less popular. But for Cube, I thought it was great. The limited format was fun as well. Not the most balanced, I would say. Printing Viving Chrysalis at Common is just a wild decision. Like, people talk about the issues with Nadu, which was certainly a massive issue, that they printed that as it was and never playtest it. I kind of think, did anyone playtest with Viving Chrysalis at Common? You know, you only have to cast that card once. You're like, damn, it's absurd. It's a 4-mana 4/5 reach that gives me 2 mana back. Like, and gives me trump blockers. None of it makes sense to me for that to be a common. But the limited set was still cool. You could do a lot of interesting things in that format. And for Cube, I think it was kind of great. I think we got some really nice, interesting build-arounds, stuff like Birthing Ritual and Chthonian Nightmare, and Ripples of Undeath, as well as the like just baseline power stuff. Like, we did a whole podcast on Nadu and Cube, right? And why we think that's fun. And stuff like Pyrogoyf, I think, is a really interesting addition to a lot of cubes. So yeah, I totally get it. I also really liked Duskmorn as a set. I think that was certainly my limited format of the year. But as for overall set of the year, I'm pretty on board with giving it to Modern Horizons, I think.
Yeah, well, I think we spent more time talking about Modern Horizons 3 this year. I think Modern Horizons 3 was the set where it kind of, I'm not going to say broke us, but I think we did like 5 episodes on it. And I think that was very much the one where it was like, we're not ever doing that again.
Yeah, when Modern Horizons 4 inevitably rolls around, you're not getting 5 set reviews. I'll tell you that now.
there was definitely a point during the Modern Horizons during the Modern Horizons 3 episodes where we were recording an episode about Modern Horizons 3 after Assassin's Creed had been released. Like Bloomburrow spoilers had started, but they'd also started spoiling Duskmorn as well. So it's kind of like we're still doing this while there's 3 other sets.
But there were just so many good cards for Cube in that set, Like,
no, exactly.
Even if outside of the super powerful stuff, because every card is pitched to be in some way interesting in constructed formats, right? It just means that there's like almost every card you could talk about for some sort of Cube.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And like, if I'm honest, there was a couple we missed as well. So expect part 6 sometime in
absolutely
2025. No, we're not going back. But yeah. You did mention there Duskmorn. That was the second placed one, and only a vote or 2 behind Modern Horizons 3. And I would agree with that in terms of what was promised for the set, and in terms of what it delivered. I think it kind of nailed it. The haunted house setting was kind of like, it was one of the ones early in the year when it was announced that I was kind of like, that sounds interesting. I'm kind of interested to see how they do that, and I thought they nailed it pretty well. Like I said in my own kind of end of year review that kind of like I thought some of the references were kind of a bit on the nose. Like you had like the twins from The Shining, you had like chainsaw, like you had a chainsaw. Some things were a bit on the nose, but I thought in general it just landed it pretty well and was kind of it was. I was pleasantly surprised with how that turned out, rather than some of the other sets of the year, which I think kind of left like some of the other sets kind of promised high, but I think underwhelmed me a little bit. But we're going to get onto that in a moment when we move on to our next category.
Oh, I think Duskmorn for me was like a real masterpiece of limited design, where they really managed to thread the needle between sort of synergy decks and cards having overlap. Like we see a lot of sets now sort of fall into one of 2 categories in limited. Either you have the quite sort of linear synergy decks where it's like a card goes in 1, maybe 2 decks and does its synergistic thing there and isn't useful anywhere else. Or we have sets like Foundations where it's basically just take the good cards, put them in your deck, ignore the synergies. And Duskmorn managed to have a lot of really powerful, interesting synergies, but the cards really overlapped between them. And even within the same color combinations, you could be doing very different synergistic things. Like your blue-green deck could be really leaning into the Manifest Dread synergies, or it could be really leaning into the self-mill stuff, or it could have some Eerie Enchantress stuff going on. And all of those things sort of felt like they overlapped and supported each other in a way, but without becoming just soup where you just play powerful cards. And it was a really well put together format, I thought.
No, definitely, and in terms of you mentioned mechanics there. Best new mechanic is also a category for the awards today, and Duskmorn features heavily in it with some of those. So yeah. I'd also agree. Probably my favorite draft format of the year as well. Yeah, banger of a set. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's take it away with probably the award people don't want to win. This is the worst set. Homelands, Fallen Empires, March of the Machine, Aftermath. Turgid dumps of sets that not even a mother could love. Here are the nominees for worst set of the year.
So the contenders for worst set are unsurprisingly the same. We have Ravnica Remastered, Murders at Karlov Manor, Fallout, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Modern Horizons 3, Assassin's Creed, Bloomburrow, Duskmorn, House of Horror, and Foundations.
And the winner for worst set of the year is Murders at Karlov Manor. So this is an interesting one because from a theming point of view and from a promise point of view, I completely get this. I don't actually think that this was the worst set of the year in terms of like gameplay or even like cards in it. But in terms of what was promised ahead of time, I think this was the one that disappointed me the most. Like it was kind of pitched as this like murder mystery style set, but it was just a Ravnica set. I did not get across like it was a Ravnica set that had a bunch of investigate cards in it. I did not get across that this was we were trying to solve anything. And like again, in my own end of year review, I kind of went off on this because like it's a murder mystery, but they told us, like, we knew who the murderer was before we ever touched the cards. There was no real mystery in the set or kind of like discovering things. Kind of like you had mechanics named after stuff, like you had mechanics named after Investigate or that kind of thing, but it didn't really feel, I didn't get the theming of I'm trying to solve something, I'm trying to work out a puzzle. It just felt like a Ravnica set. And from a play point of view, I didn't mind it. I thought it was okay. Like, it did have more, it had morphs and land cyclers, and generally I like sets that have those in. From a play point of view, I thought the set was fine, but kind of like, imagine if they promised us Dustmourn and we didn't get anything like spooky or any references. That's kind of what Murders at Karlov Manor felt like to me. I was promised murder mystery and just got a Ravnica set. So I can see why this won worst set of the year.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. I think it promised a lot and didn't really deliver. Right, I think you're bang on with the mechanics, right? Like, the mechanics, the names sort of pointed you in the direction of this murder mystery, but there's nothing about how the cards actually played that felt thematic about that.
Yeah,
it really just felt like a lot of rehashed old mechanics. Like, we've had Investigate before. We had the return of Morph, and like Morph, I think, is a bit of an all-time favorite mechanic. And
yeah, but I guess these cards don't actually interact with morphs as you want them to, because they did the what do you call it? They did the day-bound, night-bounding of werewolves. They kind of brought it back, but the cards don't entirely work with the original morphs that we used to have.
Yeah, so we had Disguise, which is basically the cards are morph, but when they're face down, they have Ward 2. So the logic behind this, right, was that Morph has been power crept. You can't spend 3 mana on a 2/2 in most formats anymore. Even like Modern Booster Draft, that's just 2 behind the curve. So I decided to try and sort of keep up with the power by adding that Ward 2. It had sort of a weird effect on the format where it made sort of certain bits of removal a lot worse. But honestly, a lot of the disguised creatures still felt pretty weak.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was a terrible limited set, though. That was partly just because I had a lot of fun with the like chalk outline Insidious Roots graveyard deck. Honestly, without that deck, I'd probably have completely hated the limited format because the other stuff was kind of medium. But that deck, for the period where no one drafted it, there was just like 3 weeks of that format where I forced that deck every time, and it was great. Because there's a lot of great ways to enable it, but would go really late with the what's called Rust Belt Maverick, is it? Rubble Belt? You exile it from your graveyard, you put a counter on something, it gets you, it triggers your Insidious Roots, it surveils, it's a 1-drop, it's great. Along with there's like a artifact creature which exiles itself and another card from a graveyard, so that's 2 triggers on your roots and your chalk outline, and you can just get these really cool value engines going and win the game that way. But yeah, like in general, the limited format I thought was fine but not exciting. I don't think it was like a dreadful set, but I think it was the thing of it really promised a lot and didn't deliver, right? Like, I don't think it was necessarily a worse set than Foundations for example, in terms of
in terms of play,
how much fun it was to draft or how impactful it was. But I think Foundations, they told us we were getting a core set and they delivered on that. Yeah. And Murders, they told us we were getting a really interesting thematic set and kind of didn't deliver on that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was definitely just from a stats point of view, it was the clear winner. Like, in second and third place, I can see why Assassin's Creed was in second place, because it wasn't really a set. It was a bunch of booster. It was a bunch of cards in 7-pack boosters, which kind of I don't want them to ever do again, but they probably will. But I can see why that was in second place. And then my actual worst set of the year was Bloomburrow. That came in third place. And for me, this was just because of the player experience. Like, set's adorable, I get that. But specifically from a gameplay point of view, I really didn't like the limited environment of Bloomburrow. I get the impression it was very like Marmitey. You either loved it or you hated it. But it just didn't click with me. And I know you drafted more of it than me, James, but like from my end, it very much felt like you had to both be in the 2-color combination of your deck and also specifically in the right creature type. You could be in the correct colors for a deck, but not get the creature synergy and therefore just have a bad deck. Like that really kind of, I didn't feel rewarded in that set at all, basically.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was honestly that draft format. You'll attest to this. When a new limited set comes out, I'm normally like a complete degenerate, at least for a few weeks. And there's basically not really any standard legal sets where I don't at least do like 30, 40 drafts on Arena. Yeah. And Bloomville, I got like, I'm not sure I even got to 10 drafts, and I was just like, I don't know, there's a Q buff on Magic Online, they've got March of Machine flashback draft. I could go and do something else. It just felt so boring because because the draft portion wasn't fun because there was no way to pivot, right? Because the cards are all so linear and only go in one deck. Like you're basically just, I'm sure I said this before the podcast, but it's, I'm in Red, White, Mice. Okay, I'll take every card with a picture of a mouse on it. And that's basically how you're meant to draft. It's not just for creatures, right? Even the spells are so linked to that creature type or that mechanic that they don't really pivot between decks most of the time. So the draft part wasn't fun. And the gameplay was just like pretty boring on-board gameplay. It was fine, but there wasn't there wasn't really potential to play many long grindy games. It was just pretty quick and curve outy. The Frogs deck was kind of cool, but that outside of that, I thought that set didn't have a lot going for it. But I think for people who care more about the flavor and the flavor, I think for some of the people, the flavor really vibed with them, and that's great. But not every Magic set has to be for everyone, but Bloomville is certainly not for me.
No, definitely. I guess that is the thing of kind of like, I guess we are a bit more, well, I'm going to say enfranchised, but I mean that in terms of we're probably kind of a bit more kind of like card first, flavor second, if that makes sense. And I guess Bloomburrow was very much a flavor first, everything else kind of afterwards, basically. It was a vibe set, and if it vibed with you, awesome, love that. If it didn't, then I think you like it was harder for us to kind of like get on board with it. But like I think just in general, for me, I can see definitely Mirza Karlov's Mana was the biggest disappointment for me for the year. So yeah, I can see why that kind of carried it to being the worst and most disappointing and unfun set of the year. But let's keep the train rolling, James. We have a lot of beautiful awards and still a lot of Magic for us to get through tonight. Let's take it away with Best New Mechanic. So this was a tremendous year for new mechanics. We got Kicker on enchantments, Kicker spread out over a couple of turns, 2 types of Kicker on morphs, a new modal type of Kicker, and the ability to give all targeted spells Kicker. Here are the nominees for Best New Mechanic.
That was great. First up, we have Crimes. That's for MKM. When you target their stuff, you commit a crime. We have Plot. We have Spree. We have Offspring from Bloomville. We have Rooms, Manifest Dread, Rad Counters, and Cloak.
And the award for Best New Mechanic goes to Rooms. So this was the Kicker on enchantments. I actually quite like Rooms. I thought it played a lot better than I initially thought it was going to. Yeah, any kind of like Kicker where you are able to kind of get use out of something early game and get use out of something late game is always going to be good, and we hadn't seen it on this type of permanence before. I think as well the fact that there was just a lot of flexibility and the fact that in the set the Rooms deck was actually quite fun definitely, I think, kind of helped carry a new mechanic and kind of get people using it. And then definitely just individual card points of view. Like one of my favorite cards of the year was the Crucible of Worlds Room with Upside, basically. That is just a very strong card. And I can see, I really like Rooms. I thought it played quite well. Our second place was also from Duskmorn, which I guess shows, again, the popularity of that set. With Manifest Dread, this was another great like type of mechanic because it's basically just like printing upside and value on a bunch of cards you're already going to play. The ability to get a 2/2 into play, was really cool and really strong. James, what do you think about Rooms and Manifest Dread, and kind of what was your mechanic of the year?
Yeah, I think I would go Manifest Dread with rooms at a close second. But I think that's maybe mostly based on the limited environment. But yeah, I think they both played great. Rooms is... I think it's nice having that mana sync ability on your value cards and on... Because there are a bunch of like your removal spells would be rooms and some of your creatures would be rooms, right? There'd be like a room that made a token or whatever. And I think just giving you more stuff to do in the late game is always great in limited, and it also means you... It's a mechanic which gives them a lot of design space, right? Yeah. And I think they took advantage of that really well. There's some really interesting, cool rooms they made, and played great in limited. I think they played great in cube. And they have overlap with other archetypes, right? Like if you're doing enchantments matter stuff, then rooms slot in really well. Manifest Dread also absolutely loved. I think it seems like quite a minor switch from the original Manifest to Manifest Dread with just, the selection out of the top two and the other one going to the graveyard. But I think it's actually a really big deal because it gives you more chances to hit a creature. And therefore it feels less like just putting a vanilla 2/2 into play. Like you have to respect a bit more that it might be an actual creature. But B, it means it overlaps and fuels your graveyard and therefore like overlaps with other graveyard synergies. I did find if you went really heavy on Manifest Dread, you did mill yourself really, really quickly. Which in 40 card formats can certainly be a concern. But I honestly kind of like that. I think limited formats where you have to worry about decking yourself are often quite fun. Because it's just a side of a game you don't normally interact with that much, right? But certainly, if I was all in on the Manifest Dread deck, I felt like I really needed at least one of the 6 mana flyer that could put cards on the bottom of your library from your graveyard to avoid decking. But that's a pretty cool. That's an interesting wrinkle in the format for me, and I thought both those mechanics played great. To comment on a mechanic, on the other hand, that got no votes, Dan, can you tell me, without looking it up, what rad counters do?
Right. So, a rad counter... so I know the specific annoyance of this is that all the cards... So, rad counters is from the Fallout set, and I believe no card itself actually explains what rad counters do. They just say you get a rad counter, and a rad counter is a token... it's an emblem you receive that basically, I believe, says on your... I think it's after you draw. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have a rad counter, mill... I'm going to say 2 cards. If you reveal a non-land permanent, you lose a life and lose a rad counter.
You're pretty close. That's a good effort. It's you mill cards equal to the number of rad counters you have. Okay. And for each non-land milled this way, you lose a life and you lose the rad counter.
Yeah.
I had the rad counter sweeper in my deck at the last cube we played.
That's, I think, why I know I got as far as I did, because I was sat next to you when we were trying to remember it. But yeah.
Yes. I looked it up every time. The first time I looked it up and still got it wrong. But I mean, maybe that says more about me than rad counters. But
no, it is very much. There is not a card, I believe, that fully explains what rad counters does. I think all the cards in the set, and I could be wrong, but like all the ones all the ones that are playable anyway, say the words you get X rad, you get an amount of rad counters, and then it just stops there. It does like the rules explanation for rad counters is on the tokens. But I don't have the tokens, which I apologize for. I should probably get rad counters for my cube for the token section. But yeah, it's. I can see why they got. I actually think it's a very cool mechanic. It self mill is cool. It's something that I like, and it is something that cube wants, especially with the Pyroglyphs and the other ghosts this year. But yeah, just as a execution, it's not great. It's really not great.
Yeah, I think mechanics like that, I could see it being cool if it was like a limited set with a whole bunch of cards that did stuff with rad counters, and you could get in some sort of mini sub-games about it. But when it's just like there's one card you've ever played with which has this mechanics, it's just sort of annoyingly complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm actually going through every card with rad counter, and yeah, not one of them has the full rules for rad counter written on it.
Great choices.
That's dreadful. And the annoying thing is that, on the card you're talking about, Nuclear Fallout, that's X black for a sorcery. Each creature gets twice -X until end of turn. Each player gets X rad counters. There is room on that card to write what a rad counter does.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this was a choice that they made.
There's flavor text. Okay, but yes, rad counters won't be one that we'll be seeing again, I guess, until, I don't know, Fallout 2, the set, not the game. Right, let's keep it moving. Let's move on to... I actually quite like this set, this next one. This one is the award for the not actually that good, but is excellent vibes card of the year. Not all cards can be as strong as Psychic Frog. Not all cards can break formats like Nadu, and not all cards can f*** like Bristly Bill. Here are the nominees for not actually that good, but is excellent vibes card of the year.
So first up, we have Sludge Titan. We have Nexus of Becoming. The I'm going to have to say that word again.
It could be a real word.
The Capitoline Triad. Preposterous Proportions. And Leonardo da Vinci.
And the winner, by a considerable margin, I will say, is Preposterous Proportions. If you don't know what this card is, it is 5 green for a sorcery. Creatures you control get +10/+10 and gain vigilance until end of turn. And the artwork is a bunch of squirrels wrecking, giant squirrels wrecking a town. So I can see why this one. I really like this category. We always get there's so many cards printed that just some of them are just awesome, but don't really get there. The fact that this is 7 mana and doesn't give your stuff trample is kind of wild. Overrun is in this set as an uncommon. Overrun is in Foundations. That is so much better than Preposterous Proportions. There is a world where, this will still end games, but not as reliably as any of the ones that give trample. It's a fun card. What did you vote for in this one, James?
I did vote for Preposterous Proportions because I think I voted maybe after I had recently drafted Foundations and cast this card, and it was quite fun.
Did it work?
It doesn't completely suck. It is worse than Overrun, I agree, but it's basically you can view this card as your opponent sacrifices creatures equals the number of creatures you have. And
that tracks.
if that number, if they have fewer creatures than you have, then you probably win. And if you have, and if otherwise, you kind of plague wind them. Because it gives vigilance as well, so they can't even kill you on the crackback. It is 7 mana, and it needs you to have a board state. This isn't a good card, but when it works, it feels great.
The vibes are excellent, and that's why it won this award. So I actually voted for the Capitoline Triad. I think this card's stupid. I really like it. I'll read what it does. It's 10 generic mana for a legendary creature, God Artificer. It's a 7/7. It has a named ability, which is Those Who Came Before, which is this spell costs 1 generic less to cast for each historic card in your graveyard. So that's artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. And then it has the activated ability, exile any number of historic cards from your graveyard with total mana value 30 or greater. You get an emblem with creatures you control have base power and toughness 9/9. So I have this in a commander deck. I'll be bringing it with me later today, James, when we play. I have never got anywhere near this. I think it's awesome. Just the ability to get an emblem that makes your things 9/9, I think is awesome. The only time I've ever seen this work is friend of the show, Fire Truck Moto, put it in Dredge and got it working. And I love that. I think this card is dreadful, actually, but I really want to win a game with it. Really, really want to win a game with it. So hopefully, maybe today is where we'll do that. The other ones on the list Leonardo da Vinci has a special mention for me because mainly because the card has nothing to do with this, but I want to build a Voltron deck and beat people to death with Leonardo da Vinci because I think that's funny. But strong other contenders in this category, as we mentioned. Preposterous Proportion takes it down. What a vibey card. We love it. All right. But next, we have a big one. Best new card for Commander. So this is the best card printed for the 99 in 2024. The days of searching through long boxes for a 6-mana draft chaff enchantment to put in your commander deck seem so long ago. Now cards designed for Commander are powerful, efficient, and are printed at such a rate, artists have to plagiarize other artists to keep up with the demand. Here are the nominees for Best New Card for Commander.
Okay, so first up we have Patchwork Banner. We have 3 Tree City, Fell the Profane, Insidious Roots, 6 Springheart Nantuko, Sink into Stupor, and Trouble in Pairs.
And the award goes to Trouble in Pairs. Are we Trouble in Pairs first? It is 2 white for enchantment. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. And whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, or casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. So this is, for me anyway, it is very much indicative of like the current Commander design. It's just a value thing that kind of is just generically quite powerful. This kind of feels like the white version of like a black market connections. That's the one that's like a juiced Phyrexian Arena that kind of just draws you cards and makes you tokens, and this just does a bunch of generic stuff that is very good in Commander. This is also the one with the plagiarized artwork, for what it's worth. But I think I actually voted for Patchwork Banner, actually. This is an uncommon that if you should probably check your draft chaff if you have one, because they're about £5, actually. Patchwork Banner is the manolith that you choose a creature type when it comes in and gives all those creatures +1/+1. Just a very solid card that kind of probably goes in any type or matters deck. James, what was your best new Commander card of the year?
I voted for Insidious Roots because I think it's the coolest card on the list, and it would be a lot of fun to make work in Commander. It sort of depends what you mean by best, really, doesn't it? Obviously, there's several. Most of the cards on this list are probably, more lead to more game wins in Commander. 6 seems kind of phenomenal in Commander, honestly. It's like giving retrace to everything. But Trouble in Pairs, I could certainly see as the best on power level. The first time I read this card, and someone said it was really good in Commander, I was like, oh, we're doing something cool where you like give your opponents extra turns and then they'd fizzle and maybe there's some like interesting synergy thing. Then just read it against, oh no, it's just good, isn't it? It's just like
white. Yeah, exactly.
It's just like a weird heuristic study or whatever. I don't like this sort of card in Commander. They're just kind of boring to me. But yeah, it certainly seems powerful, and I could see running it.
No, I see that. If I'm honest with you, I think actually the most like if we grouped them together, I think they probably would have run away with it. And that's the MDFCs from Modern Horizons 3 have genuinely changed Commander, just in terms of like for all mana bases now in Commander, you can consider, how many MDFCs am I running? Especially the ones that you can pay, like with MH3, we got 2 in each color of ones that can come into play untapped if you pay 3 life, which effectively means they're just free to run. So there's specifically like Fell the Profane, which is a removal spell, which comes on a land that comes into play untapped. That's just free to run. There's an argument that any deck in black should just run that. Same with like Witch Enchanter, which is destroys an artifact or enchantment, or it's a land that comes into play untapped. I think that there is a world where these are probably most impactful cards of the year for Commander, just because now every Commander deck going forward will there is a world where just like if you're building a fully tuned Commander deck, you should be running these just in general. You should just be running them, and it's now a question of how many you run rather than if you should run them or not.
Yeah, for sure. Especially Commander being, a 40 life format, just bolting yourself for your untapped land matters a ton less, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Came back modality late game is great. Also really good with pitch cards, right? If you can essentially sometimes pitch your lands to your Force of Will or your Solitude or whatever it might be.
They'll generally save powerful ones like this, I think, for sets like Modern Horizons. But we will see more MDFCs, but I think ones at this power level, like just ones where they come into play untapped, are kind of wild.
Yeah, for sure. Really strong Cube as well. Like Sink into Stupor especially is a card I really like in Cube.
Yeah, again, yeah, it's just retron. Yeah. A lot of these, from a queue point of view, are just the argument of like, where do I have room for them?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Basically, because like there is a limit on how many just like effectively lands with upside you can run. But like, yeah, I've not run Fel the Profane in mine, but I probably just should be. And same with Sing Into Stupor, just because they are good. But anyway, let's from good things to not so good things. Our next category is the biggest mistake of the year. That's not the commander bans or the following shitstorm. There is an old Portuguese proverb: the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Some of the mistakes this year have come from a place of people trying to do the right thing, or at a minimum, people doing their best with what they had available to them. Some mistakes, however, are not accidents. They're a corporate bulldozer tearing through any good intentions in order to keep the red line going up. Here are the nominees for the biggest mistake of the year.
For the biggest mistake of the year, we have printing Nardu without playtesting its final form, Wizards stopping printing Magic cards in Portuguese and simplified Chinese, delaying Grief Span in Legacy, play boosters replacing draft and set boosters, and making Secret Lairs limited print run.
And the award goes to making Secret Lairs limited print run. So this is definitely one that I think is, I would agree with. I think these all suck, to be honest with you. I mean, delaying Greenspan and Legacy might just be because I was talking to the wife when I put this list together, who's a big Legacy player. But the rest of them, I think, all suck in some various forms, basically. But kind of like, specifically from the making Secret Lairs limited print run, which is, it was a runaway winner. It had noticeably more votes than any of the other ones. This is something that kind of like, especially as we've just had the Marvel Secret Lairs, which really, and quite rightly, kind of like a lot of people felt really, it was just a very crappy situation, is the best way I can describe it. It's basically, it feels like Wizards shooting themselves in the foot because people want to give them their money to buy things. And then just the whole way they've done these limited print run Secret Lairs is just dreadful. Like the experience of being in like a queue for 4 hours to then go through to a list that says you can't, that they're all sold out, just sucks and is generally a bad experience for any like no one buying a Secret Lair is having a nice time, basically. Like even if you get what you want to do, you still may have had to wait an hour or 2 hours, and then you have to make a quick decision. And then just the fact that because people can buy, I think it's like you can buy multiple. You can't just buy, like, you can buy more than one of these. Just means that just scalpers are hoovering these up, and everyone kind of hates it. And it's just this really shitty situation where just kind of like it's a self-perpetual cycle where basically Wizards is printing stuff that people want to buy, which is good. Like, hooray, people can buy this stuff. But because they're making it limited print run, it doesn't work for anyone. Like, when the situation is the only people happy with this are scalpers, we are in a bad situation. Like, they either need to make it you can only buy one, or they need to make it so that it's print to demand. Like the reason they changed this was because of just the lead times beforehand. Basically, they would sell them and then print them, whereas now they print them and then sell the amount that they have made, so that they can send them out. And people get them within like a couple of weeks, rather than like it would take like 3 to 6 months last time. Or like the main one was that there was a Commander deck which took like over a year. And I get that those delays suck, but like for ones like a Marvel set where even the Wizards CEO or the Hasbro CEO expected that, like, said these will sell out immediately, that don't have ones like these limited print run, like people would still be buying these for people at Christmas, that kind of stuff, if they were still available. And it's just generally a shitty situation. And like for those who didn't get the Marvel Secret Lair, like the main thing I would say is they will all get reprinted at some point in the future. Like you may not get the artwork that was in the Secret Lair, but every single face commander from the Marvel Secret Lair you will get in the future. It is a multi-year deal. They will all be reprinted at some point in the future. Don't worry about that. Don't feel like you need to spend £100, £200 on a Scalpers one, because you can proxy until then. It'll be all right. James, did you have anything on the Secret Lairs, or was there any of the other ones you wanted to touch on?
The Secret Lairs, I mean, it didn't impact me really directly. I'm still yet to buy a Secret Lair, but I just certainly heard a lot of negativity about this, and it sounds like a really poor experience and really needless. Like, I don't know about you, I didn't really hear many people complaining about the long lead times for the secret lairs. Like, I think people sort of just knew that when they were buying them and were broadly okay with it. And also, if you're going to do the limited print run, because these weren't the sort of things that were designed to sell out, right? I think they just sort of misjudged the quantities people would order. I don't know why they were surprised that lots of people wanted to buy Marvel stuff, but apparently they were. But you'd think, right, the cost to Wizards when they print something and don't sell it just isn't going to be that high. Like, of the total of Wizards' expenditure for bringing products to market, the actual printing cost is just not going to be that big a part of it.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd just really aim high, like shoot high with if you're doing a fixed print run, right? Just like print twice the amount you expect to sell, and if you don't sell all of it, then fine. Whereas when they undershoot and it seems like from their point of view, they're leaving a ton of money on the table, plus they're really annoying lots of the community. And even if you do get one, they're making the experience of buying a secret lair way worse, right? Because you've got to go and sit in a queue for ages, which no one really wants to do. So really weird decision for me. Like, even, I think the Monty Python one sold out almost immediately, right? Which was kind of a shame. I thought the Birds of Paradise were very funny for that. The African and European swallow. That was great. But yeah, it's just a really bizarre decision. Printing Nadu, I think we've discussed, really dumb.
There's a whole episode.
Yeah. I
Good
mean,
for Cube.
Cool for Cube. But probably not a smart decision all round. I suspect no one voting for the delaying the grief ban probably reflects the number of legacy players who listen to our podcast specifically, but I know they're mad about it.
Well, I will just say, my wife asked me to add that, and I know she voted on this form.
Did she?
I'll check. I'll check what she actually voted for in the end.
Okay.
But maybe she voted for Nadu, but yeah. On the other ones, the stopping printing magic in Portuguese and simplified Chinese is the short version of that is they just going to print them. They're just going to print English and expect them to deal with that basically.
This is the one I voted for. I don't know. There's a lot of Magic that's played in Brazil and in Portugal, to be fair.
And there's a lot of people in China.
This seems So I've heard there are a few people in China as well. Yeah. This seems like long term. I think this is probably a really poor decision for Wizards. Like, I believe that that it is maybe costing them more money to print now than not to. But if you want to develop the game and grow the game, then having people be able to play the game in their native language seems like a prerequisite to growth for me. So this seems like a really odd decision.
Yeah. A lot of these do seem so. Yeah, so like Nadu was the one on here that I think was a genuine mistake, and just like they come out and like it was a balls up. They didn't see it. I do feel a bit of sympathy there, but like all the rest of them, I haven't touched on replacing draft boosters with set boosters. I think generally that hasn't really kind of affected things too much, but from a gameplay point of view, I think it's worse. I think we'll see more of that when booster boxes go down to being 30 packs. It'll just generally feel like we're getting a lot less next year than it. That's a combination of things that I think will really start ramping up over the next couple of years. But yeah, kind of like most of these are just ones where it is just Wizards chasing the red line and like the sales from COVID, like with the game, like with a lot of industries. If I'm honest with you, you see it everywhere, and yeah, it's disappointing. And I would not be surprised if they make another change, especially to the secret layers at some point in the future, just because like I am the type of person who would buy secret layers, but like all the ones that I want, I just can't be asked to have the miserable experience of wait. Like as someone who buys a lot of gig tickets, I don't want to repeat that experience in my Magic. You know what I mean? Like it's
so we're putting Wizards of the Coast and Ticketmaster on a level for customer service.
Yeah, which is never where you actually want to be. Yeah.
I think with all these decisions, you say that they're chasing the bottom line and they're chasing the very short-term bottom line. And the reality is that is what that's just how corporations work. The CEO of Wizards, I'm sure, cares to a certain extent about the long-term health of the game and about what Magic's going to be like in 10 years. But that is not what is driving their decisions. The decisions are being driven because the line needs to go up next quarter and the quarter after that. And people already spend a lot of money on Magic. There's to a certain extent we're kind of saturated with how many products they can release, how much money they can get people to spend on the game. So when they start looking at things like cutting their costs by removing printings in other languages, for example, and if that means their profits go up in the short term, then they're probably going to do it. It really sucks. I think it is short-sighted, but it's unfortunately, that's how a lot of corporations are run, and Wizards certainly isn't an exception at the moment.
Yeah, it is definitely something that kind of I think will bite them in the long term, because I'm going to be honest with you, like, this is the year I spent the least on Magic, or given the least money to Wizards.
Yeah.
Like, I've not done, like effectively pre-releases and a Magic-Con is all the money they got out of me. I've not really bought product. I bought singles. I bought proxies because it was easier and cheaper and nicer experience than sitting in a secret layer queue. So, for sure. Like, I will not be alone in that. Other players will be moving to that too. And I think next year will be a bigger one, especially I think we should move on, but just like next year with booster packs going down to, or booster boxes going down to 30 packs is just going to mean I'm probably never going to buy a booster box again. I don't know, but anyway, let's keep the ball rolling. Let's move on to a fun one. Next up, we have Best New Card for Cube. 2024 has actually been an awesome year for Cube. While the rise of Universes Beyond and the rotation of Eternal formats with sets like Modern Horizons 3 has led a lot of enfranchised players to feel alienated from the game, Cube and Cubers get to navigate around that. If you don't like Marvel, you don't have to include them in your Cube. But on top of that, we've also got a bunch of awesome and powerful cards this year. And here are the nominations for Best New Cube Card of the Year.
Yes, the nominations that received votes in this category are Bristly Bill, Spine Sower.
Who
that's what I hear. Vaultborn Tyrant, Ocelot Pride, Marionette Apprentice, Pyrogoyf, Headliner Scarlet, Nardu Winged Wisdom, and the Surveil Lands as a cycle.
And the award for Best New Cube Card of 2024 is the Surveil Lands, the full cycle. So, I'm not going to say that we slept on them. I think, like, generally as a community, everyone kind of thought, like, these are fine, these are good. But the fact they come into play tap means they're probably not for every cube. But the utility on these is just phenomenal. These are quite rightly some of the most impactful cards of the year. I don't think I run a full cycle in my cube. I think I have a couple in either cards I want to combo with. There's like in theory, there is a combo in my cube where you can mill your whole deck with lands, with the Surveil Lands, and then obviously the ones in like more graveyardy colors. I'm more like to run them there. But these are, I think, just becoming like after fetches, original jewels, shocks, and triomes. They're probably the best after that, would you say, James? They're probably the fifth best cycle of lands for Cube, and very impactful, and I can really see why people are running them. It's basically, if you're not going to play a 1-drop and you have a fetch land, you're probably fetching for this now over anything else, which is very important and very impactful. So I think Surveil Lands coming up top, and it is like they got like almost half of the votes in this category, which is a which is a big number. So deserving, I think, James. What have you thought? What have you thought about Surveil Lands this year, and about any of the other cards that have stood out to you?
Yeah, Surveil Lands are super powerful. I think the interaction of turning your fetchers into a Surveil late game is certainly not one to sleep on. Like, I've definitely been in the scenario of taking a where I'd take a Surveil land over the untapped jewel in that color, because it's like I can already fetch my colors untapped with my fetch lands, but I've got 3 fetch lands for all to fetch a Surveil land, and the value of being able to get that Surveil basically for free off your fetch when you draw it late game is really valuable. I voted for Vaultborn Tyrant on this list.
Nice.
So I think it's a really good addition to the sort of roster of large creatures you can put in powerful cubes. It's mostly with these, when we're talking about cards that we cheat into play, most of them are sort of good with only a certain selection of the ways you cheat cards into play, right? Like, you've got, for example, 15 mana Emrakul, great with sneak attack, but doesn't work with your animate dead. Versus, like, Woodfall Primus, great with sneak attack or flash, but doesn't work with Shallow Grave. Or the Atraxa, right? Like, less good with flash, still good, but good with sneak attack, but not quite at that A+ level. And Vaultborn Tyrant for me is like, it's a really good in that it kind of works with all of them pretty well. Like, it's maybe not the best for any of them, but like, you sneak this in, you're gonna draw 2 cards, hit them for 7, gain 6 life, and have a 6/6 left over. Yeah. If you reanimate this, it's just really solid. You get life, you get cards. If you flash this in, it's going to be great. You get the cards, you're left with a body, and you can natural order for it, which is a really big deal. It just sort of works pretty well with all of them. I also quite like that Eureka is a card I always want to play with in Cube. I think it's a ton of fun. Yeah. It's pretty high variance, but if you Eureka and put in like this and then more fatties, then you get the triggers off the other ones too, which is really cool. Yeah, so I just really like that card. Like, I'm not saying it's, absolute A tier fatty. Like, it's, you shouldn't be taking this over like Atraxa or Archon of Cruelty or something. But I think it's good that it sort of just works with all the ways that you cheat stuff into play.
I'd agree, and it's also just about castable in a green deck.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, it's 7 mana, but that, like, it's 5 and double green, and in a green ramp deck that is very castable. Not like, unlike Atraxa or something like that, where you're going into 4 colors or that kind of stuff. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I voted for Pyrogoyf because I have a stereotype, James, and I need to keep it up. I love Pyro. Like, for me, that was like, if there was an archetype of the year, like, the Delirium deck would be mine, and Pyrogoyf is just a fantastic card in that, and just easily, I think the best Flame Tongue card we ever printed. And for Cube players, that's a very solid place to be. Ocelot Pride actually came second, and I could see being higher on this. It's just I haven't got to play with it that much because I don't play Modern, and everyone takes it very aggressively in my Cube. I've seen it do some very cool things. But yeah, Ocelot Pride, notable mention in second place.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good shot. I will say, again, it depends how you interpret best. If I opened a pack of Powered Cube with all of these cards in, Ocelot Pride is the card I would take. I think it's really, really strong.
Okay.
It's I don't want to go too hard on the hyperbole, but it does kind of feel like the White Ragavan a little bit. Like, in terms of the games where you cast it on turn 1 and you just start getting hits in for free, it feels very hard to stop. And it also then just randomly does some very powerful things late game sometimes. I'll say the time that I really came up with this card was first time I copied it with Satya, the Jeskai legend. The amount of tokens you end up with after you do that is just absurd. It was one of those things where I went to my end step on Magic Online, was just like, oh, I have like 20 creatures now. That's cool. Because because the thing is, the Ocelot Pride makes more Ocelot Prides because it's a token Ocelot Pride. it sees that, then generates more Ocelot Prides, which then make more tokens. Similar with like Fable of the Mirror Breaker, for example. You can really go off and start generating more Ocelot Prides. And it has like it has some interesting gameplay like that, you know. Like if you make it work to like cast a 4 Failingus and then gain more life, and you get all the 4 Failingus tokens again,
Jesus.
you know. The card's really strong. But yeah, there's we've had really good cube cards this year, I think. But yeah, I think Pyroglyph's a really good shout too. I like with Pyroglyph as well that it's kind of a build around for clones, which is something we don't see very often, because if you clone it, you get 2 triggers because they see both Pyroglyphs trigger when you play the new one, and there's just a reason to play the other Lurglyphs is kind of cool.
No, 100%. And for Cube, it's been a really strong year because like there was some on the list that didn't get votes, but in previous years would have been high contenders. Like Emperor of Bones has been a fantastic card. Warren's Soul Trader is a fantastic card. Springheart Nantuko didn't get a single vote, but that card is cracked. Mm-hmm. Same with Ajani Nakato Pariah and Forensic Gadgeteer. Really strong card for Cube, and long may it continue.
Yeah. Tell you what, if you ever put a Springheart Nantuko on a Pyroglyph, you're in business.
You are, Jay. Yeah, let's go, Jay. No.
It's sort of one of those though where you don't get to make as many tokens as you'd like because your opponent's already dead, which is kind of a shame. But
love it, nice.
But it certainly does some work.
Mm-hmm. So our next category is for best artwork, and this is one that we let the Academy, and by that I mean all of you at home, write in an answer for. In a year where the CEO of Hasbro has said, inside of development, we've already been using AI, as well as saying, we will deploy it significantly and liberally internally as both a knowledge worker aid and a development aid. It's probably never been more important to acknowledge the great work that the artists who make the Magic cards feel like Magic cards have done in 2024. Here are the nominees that we got for best artwork.
Yeah, so I'd say some of these are indicative of why we don't let you write in the answers for all the questions. The first response was just Messam.
I got a vote.
That's nice. You got a vote. There we go. I didn't get a vote, so I guess that's good for you. We got Anointed Procession, specifically the dog version.
That is adorable if you've not seen it.
I did look it up, and it's very good. Yeah, we got Trouble in Pairs, of course, to be a troll. We got Helpful Hunter, Insidious Roots, Coruscation Mage, Offspring Token, specifically.
That is adorable, by the way. For what it's worth, it's a little otter holding up a fish in the air. That is adorable for what it's worth.
I've just looked it up, and it's great. Yeah, okay. I have great respect for that one. We have Alayla, Birds of Paradise, BLC. I'm not quite sure what BLC means. There are a lot of Birds of Paradise.
Bloomborough. BLC is Bloomborough Commander.
Oh yeah, that is good birds actually. I'll go with that. We have Nervous Gardener, which is great art actually. We have the Bloomborough Full Art Plains Winter, and we have Teysa Opulent Oligarch, which is also really nice art. But for the winner
is 100% correct. The winner is Helpful Hunter by Xavi Gatzuela. Everyone, I think, will know what this card is. It is the picture of the adorable cat with a feather in its mouth. Yeah, I'd agree with this. This is, in a year full of adorable pets and animals, this is, for me, this is the most adorable, and I can see why this took it down. Everyone that has been submitted, I would agree with, I think have been bangers. The Anointed Procession we got for a friend for their birthday, specifically the dog one. It's dog on one side, cats on the other. That's also adorable. A lot of solid art this year. And keep the artists employed, please, Wizards. Don't give me some AI bollocks in the future. I won't buy it.
Yes, 100%.
All right. We're rolling through these at a bit of a pace. We have a big one now. We have Best New Commander. And this is the best commander printed in 2024 to lead a deck. The commander continued its dominance over Magic in 2024. There were 320 unique commanders printed in paper sets this year. And if you include arena, ancillary products, and playtest cards, that number rises to 419. But somehow, I still can't get a playable Sultai Elf commander. Here are the nominees for Best New Commander.
So we have Voya, Jaws of the Conclave, a Wise Mothman, Obeka, Splitter of Seconds, the Necrobloom, Omo, Queen of Vesuva, Balin the Haymaker, Flubs the Fool, Arabella, Abandoned Doll, Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls, and Storm, Force of Nature.
And the award goes to Obeka, Splitter of Seconds. Worth pointing out, this was very close. The Necrobloom was just behind it, one right behind it. But yeah, Obeka is a banger of a card. It's a really unique one. Obeka is 1 and a Grixis for a 2/5 legendary creature ogre warlock. It has menace, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. So yeah, you just fill this deck with a bunch of really awesome upkeep triggers and then kind of pop off with it. It's really cool. It's also a very unique style of commander. Not many commanders give you that kind of interaction where kind of you just get like upkeep triggers are designed to happen once. Getting multiple of them really kind of breaks the game. And yeah, it let you do some cool things. I did a deck take on this. I will put links down in the description below, but there's some cool cards with this. Like, do you know what Herald of Leshrac does, James?
No idea.
I think you'll like this. It's 6 and a black for a 2/4. Phenomenal stats.
Love that. Yeah, great start.
Cumulative upkeep, because importantly, cumulative upkeep works with this how you want it to. Gain control of target land. It gets a +1 for each land you control but don't own, and when it leaves play, each player gains control of each land he or she controls. So this is as you steal all of your opponent's lands. And this is a very cool, unique thing that kind of like obviously there are like the generic ones like Shieldred Whispering one and the Initiative. But like why I like this commander is that it lets weird cards from Cold Snap be cool, and that is what I want from Commander. So yeah, I can see why Obeka won. I think it's a really cool one. I think you actually voted for Obeka, James. Why was it your Commander of the Year?
Yeah, I really value in commanders that they do something unique. Like, obviously, there's a lot of like very powerful commanders on this list, but Obeka is the only one where I look at it and I'm already building the deck in my head. You know, like it really just makes me like because it's not super narrow, right? It's not the you've just got to go with this really narrow deck. The deck isn't sort of built for you. It's just giving you more upkeep steps. There's more, there's like a few directions you can go with that. And yeah, I think it's like just a really unique and potentially kind of powerful effect. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in commanders.
No, yeah, I'd agree. It was a very cool commander. And so my vote was for what came in second place, which was the Necrobloom. This is the one that it has some stats, but it has the main line of land cards in your graveyard have Dredge 2. And this is the closest we've got to a Dredge commander because it's a static ability that gives stuff Dredge. They're never going to give me like Dredge 7 on a commander because they're cowards, James. They're cowards. But yeah, I love the Necrobloom. This is one I haven't actually built my set yet. We did gameplay with this, and our friend Josh built it for that. But it's definitely one that I just want to build. I think it's sick. This is one on my list that I've been meaning to get to. Some other kind of ones that are worth mentioning, I think, just from a personal point of view. So it's worth pointing out, all of these nominees are the most popular ones according to EDH Rec. There is no personal favourites in terms of what was nominated. It was just the top 10 from EDH Rec. I guess there's a world where some of the Marvel ones might have got in if we left it up longer because they are more recently printed. But I think these are all sick. Like I've been meaning to build a Omo Queen of Vesuva deck. We got the precon recently, me and the wife, and that's the one that kind of when it enters or attacks, put an everything counter on one target land and on one target creature. So kind of like all your stuff becomes all types, and it does some cool things with like the Locust lands, with the Urza lands, that kind of stuff. There's just a bunch of really. It's another one where like there is probably a best way of building it. There's also just some weird niche things that you can do with it. Like all of your things, I don't know, are like there are some cool things you can do with cards being every creature type and every land type. There's a lot of room there, and yeah, I'm looking forward to putting Omo together in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that one seems pretty cool. Finally, a way to make those Tron lands playable in Commander, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the way it works, you only need one Tron land. One Tron land and an everything land, and it will generate the mana that you want. The one thing I would say is, I personally hate Voya, Joy of the Conclave. No hate to anyone who's built it, but just I think this is probably one of the strongest commanders printed this year. That's 2 and a Naya for a 5/5 legendary creature wolf with Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 3. And whenever it attacks, put X+1 counters on each creature you control, works the number of elves you control, draw a card for each wolf you control. It just does a little bit too much, and I don't think many of the ones on this list have Ward, but there is an alarming amount of Ward being printed this year, which I don't personally like in Commander. I think literally we did, during Dustmorn, I did a rant about Ward, like everything having bloody Ward 2, and then the next time we played Commander, someone was playing a commander from Dustmorn that had Ward 2 and I didn't notice. I don't read other people's cards. The game's complicated enough, James. What am I meant to do?
just assume it has Ward 2 and you'll find out if it doesn't. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, Voya does seem very strong. I might put it in my Changelings deck, though. It sounds like it would kind of pop off in Changelings.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. But yeah. There, I think that's very strong. But yeah, just in generally, I think it's probably an elf commander with a couple of Overrunny wolves sprinkled in, something like that, maybe. But
I mean, there are more powerful elves in Magic than wolves, so that might be a good direction.
Well, I'm assuming actually just you build it as an elf deck, and then it just draws you a card when it attacks because it's a wolf. That seems
sure. Yeah.
That seems pretty good, and yeah. There's plenty of elves in Naya as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, let's keep the train rolling. We have 3 awards left, and they're 3 of the biggest. Next up, we have Most Deserving Ban. So sometimes a card designed to be powerful is a little bit too powerful. Sometimes it's a deck that's too strong that needs a piece taken out of it to help balance things out. Sometimes, however, a card slips through the cracks. Sometimes an interaction isn't seen, or a last-minute change to balance a card kicks the power level of that card into the stratosphere. Sometimes all of those things happen, and you have a card f*** up every format it touches. Here are 3 honourable mentions and an obvious winner.
Yeah, so in no particular order, we have Dockside Extortionist in Commander, Cranial Ram in Pauper, Grief in Modern and Legacy, and Nardu Winged Wisdom in all of the formats.
And the winner is obviously Nardu. It's worth mentioning we put out this form before the most recent round of bans in Modern and Legacy, but I don't think it would have mattered. Nardu, this is the biggest sweep of anyone we've seen. Next year, the award is going to be named the Nardu Award for Most Deserving Ban of the Year, I think. This card's, kind of good, James.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
So it's worth pointing out, so Nardu is currently only banned right now in Modern and Commander. The Legacy ban can't be too far off at this rate, I wouldn't have assumed.
Putting up some pretty good numbers in Legacy, yeah. It's the card's just so upset. And it's the fact that your combo piece is also just has a great rate, and then the combo is so easy. And it's not the sort of combo where it's like you have to put together multiple pieces and then you just win the game. But it gets you so much value straight away in a way that's quite hard to interact with. That
just by itself. And if they do interact, you get a card out of it. So
exactly. None of the design choices make sense for this. We've heard that they didn't play test it and didn't see the interaction with 0 equip costs, which you have to imagine that if this was anything other than a very last minute change, someone on Wizards play design team would have spotted that. This isn't some niche rules interaction that would easily slip through the cracks. This is, I think if you gave someone 2 hours to try and break Nardu, I'm pretty sure they find 0 equip cost equipment, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, so specifically on this. So again, kind of in my end of year video, I have sympathy for this because it is just a mistake. It was designed. So yes, it was in Modern Horizons 3 in the main set, but it was designed as a commander card. And basically, it turns out they have 2 categories of cards: cards for commander that go through a casual playtest team, and cards for competitive that go through a competitive team. So no one on the competitive team saw or no one in general playtested the final version of Nadu at all, and no one in the in the competitive side looked at Nadu wasn't involved in its conversations while it was being changed. And like that is a fuck up. That is a mistake. But again, I think our biggest mistake of the year last year was Wizards laying off a couple of hundred employees. When this is a consequence of that, basically. This will happen again. There will be another card like this in a year or two that will break a format like this. And most of the really broken cards in Magic have been things where they've either made a last minute change, like Skull Clamp or Oko. I think were both kind of balanced like last minute to kind of make changes. But kind of like this was like the culmination of everything. It was like an interaction they didn't notice with a last minute change. They didn't realize what it would do. They didn't get tested either. And also just the fact that it was everywhere for like 3 months really made it feel like it wasn't like they didn't just like emergency ban it. It kind of was out in the world long enough for it to be putting up numbers, and then you can't ban it because you have people playtesting for like a pro tour, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it really took a while. Worth mentioning as well, because we haven't had a chance to talk about these on the podcast. I don't know if you want to. I want to touch on them, James, but we have had some bans more recently. I could imagine cards like the One Ring being banned would have put up some numbers on this, but I don't think it'd be close to Nadu. And Psychic Frog being banned in Legacy. Were there any of the bannings or unbannings recently, James, that kind of you wanted to touch on at all?
Yeah, I think the One Ring everyone expected. Psychic Frog and Legacy. I mean, my opinion on the Legacy ban lists, I think, is very different from the prevailing opinion of the Legacy format. I sort of feel like Legacy should be able to cope with an Ophidian. You all have access to Swords, Plowshares, and maybe Brainstorm's a problem. But, you know, I don't play Legacy. The format is not run for me, nor should it be. It's fine. I think given the way, you know, if... given the nonsense that's banned in Legacy already, I can see Psychic Frog is more egregious than those cards. I mean, you know, you compare Psychic Frog to what's the idiot that like flashes back cards when it attacks?
Oh, you mean Dreadhorde Arcanist?
Dreadhorde Arcanist, yeah. Like if Dreadhorde Arcanist is banned, then obviously Psychic Frog also needs to be banned,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, I guess that seems to be the approach to Legacy ban list, and that's fine. One Ring, definitely a good ban. Really boring card. Completely ubiquitous in Modern. The thing that excited me about that ban list update, though, is the unbans in Modern. I think the unbans are actually really cool. I have a lot of issues in Modern format. I'm not like buying back in, but I've been like curious enough to load up Magic Online and play a couple of leagues, you know. Like the Mox Opal decks seem really cool. It's, you know, still in that initial space where people aren't sure what the best builds are, and you play against a lot of variety, and I think there's a lot of good brewing space out there. Faithless Looting, again, like really powerful enabler, lots of good decks to be built there. I've been jamming with the Persist Indomitable Creativity deck, which has played really well. And these feel like unbans where like they're adding really powerful cards to the format, but it also feels like it's hard for those cards to be way too good because they promote strategies that you can hate out if you want to.
Yeah.
Like Mox Opal is certainly a very powerful card, but also Stony Silence exists in the format, Meltdown exists in the format. Yeah, it seems like if you really want to beat the Mox Opal deck, you can similar deal with Faithless Looting. And listen, I think there was a point in Modern's history where it was maybe too much about the linear decks versus the hate. Like, you know, when you played against Affinity in the old days, it very much just felt like, oh, if you draw your Stony Silence, you'll win. If you don't, I'll win. But Modern, and I think that was a bad thing, but since that point, Modern's answered a lot of added a lot of really powerful generic answers, things like Solitude, Leyline Binding. These are all cards that give you a lot more of a shot to beat the linear decks in game one, which I think is really important. And on top of that, I think these unbans just push Modern away from the place it has been in, which has felt quite homogenous to me. Like, there have been points where, like, sure, theoretically there's a lot of decks, but they're all kind of playing the same subsection of cards, you know? It's just like different combinations of evoke elementals and the other busted Modern Horizons cards. You know, like, yeah, you can say the format's diverse because there's 30 decks, but they all play the same cards, you know, just in slightly different combinations. It's not the same as how I feel about Legacy, to be honest. Like, sure, you can say, like, oh, look at these 15 different blue decks, but, like, yeah, they're all, you know, 4 Brainstorm, 4 Force of Will, 4 Ponder. Like, you're just, like, changing the last couple of cards and saying it's a different deck. So, yeah, I think it actually promotes modern decks that look very different, and I think that's cool. And something certainly had to be done about Mardu Energy, because that card was, or the Boros Energy, because that deck was very stupid.
Yeah, that had Amped Raptor, and was Giganthron in that as well? I think it was.
And the One Ring.
Well, oh, okay, yeah. Jesus, yeah, ban all that. I guess the big question on this, James, how good is Splinter Twin going to be? My gut is not very, but
yeah, I think I probably agree. I mean, I've heard some people say it's they think it's playable, which is obviously maybe better than I thought it would be. I don't think it's about to be taking over a format. Like, it's the point where Splinter Twin was a really powerful modern deck. We didn't have Solitude, we didn't have Fatal Push.
Yes.
The best removal spell was Lightning Bolt by a really long way, and obviously Deceiver Exarch doesn't die to Lightning Bolt. The format's just way easier to disrupt now. But I could see the deck. I can see the deck putting up some numbers, and it's a deck people love, right? And there's absolutely no reason they shouldn't be allowed to play with it in Modern. So again, a really good unban.
Exactly. Yeah, I could see it being like the Dredge thing of, like, no one expects it. It puts up a number, but most of the time it's a 4-mana enchantment that it's a 4-mana aura that can be interacted with. But
yeah. I've seen some of the twin decks are playing Fear of Missing Out as well as a sort of secondary Splinterweast.
I think I saw that.
It's also a good card, which is kind of cool tech.
I love it. Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about more of that in 2025. But let's move on. We have 2 left, and some might say that this is actually the big one of the year. Next up, we have Pet of the Year. So, yeah, this is a big award. This could possibly be the most coveted of all the MTGs, therefore making it the most coveted prize in all of Magic. Keep your World Championships. This is Pet of the Year. James, take it away with the good boys and girls.
Oh, there's so many good boys and girls. First up, we have Genku Fox Token. Absolutely brilliant. Faithful Watchdog. Great boy. Helpful Hunter. Already discussed. No more needs to be said. It's bringing you a feather. You will value the feather greatly. We have Bria Riptide Rogue, Failure Exuberant Shepherd, and Generous Pup.
And the award, quite rightly, goes to Helpful Hunter. Again, this cute little cat is, the winningest card in this year's MTGs? Love to see it. Yeah. The fact that it looks kind of like my cat has nothing to do with me being biased about this at all. I can be stoic. I can be impartial. I think, it just happens to be the most adorable card of the year, and happens to look like my cat. Love it. Very happy. So is Miri. James, what did you vote for in this one?
This is for Helpful Hunter. There was only one. Correct. But this was, some of these awards are a matter of opinion. Like, we acknowledge that they're subjective. This one wasn't.
It's a matter of fact. I agree.
Yeah, it's a matter of fact. There's an objective reality here, and that's for Helpful Hunter is the Pet of the Year.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I was a little bit worried when Generous Pup got printed just in time for this award to go out and be voted for, because that's a dog feeding 3 small cats. It's got everything on one card. So there was a moment where I was a little bit worried, but Generous Pup, notable second place behind the adorable powerhouse that is Helpful Hunter. So well done, you beautiful cat. You get all the treats. All right. we have our last award, James, and all right, this might be a bigger one. Card of the Year. So in total, there was 2,187 new Magic cards printed in 2024. That is a wildly large number. For context, it took them 4 years when the game was originally created to get to that number, and that's making things like lands as well. We've had 4 years worth of cards in 1 year, but only one of those 2,187 cards can be the Card of the Year. And here are the nominees.
We have Bristly Bill Spinesower, Psychic Frog, Pyroglyph, Surveil Lands as a cycle, Stringheart Nantuko, and Insidious Roots.
And the award goes to Psychic Frog. So I don't think there can be too many complaints with this one. I think just in terms of Magic cards that you've seen the most this year, in terms of winningest, in terms of people playing them, Psychic Frog is pretty high up there. I remember that I initially might not have been as high on this one as I probably should have been in our set review. I know, James, that you definitely were. It's proved to be a lot more than just a callback to Psychotog. This is a very powerful card, and it's definitely shown that it's put up numbers in everywhere that it's seen play. Yeah, very strong card. It had double the amount of votes of any of our other contenders, with Surveil Lands and Bristly Bill Spinesower, who, as a reminder to you all, he fucks, coming in second place with half the amount of votes each. Awesome card. James, what did you vote for in this category, and what do you think of our winner, Psychic Frog?
Yeah, I voted for the Frog. The Frog's so good. It's just for it. It's one of those cards where it feels like turn 2 Frog, if you have really anything to back it up, is just going to run away with so many games. And combine that with the fact that it just doesn't die to damage-based removal, basically. Like, they try and bolt it and you just discard 2 cards, and now your Frog's massive, and you have the cards to then jump it later. It's so powerful. It's and I've maybe a bit biased. It goes in decks I really like to draft, but I think the Frog on power level just has to get that, and the gameplay I think is can be pretty good too. But love a bit of Frog.
For Cube, how have you found it in Cube this year? Because obviously, like, the main place it's been putting up numbers is like Eternal formats. Like, obviously, as you mentioned, it's been banned in Legacy because of just you can't have card advantage like Brainstorm and protection like Force of Will combined with this card. It's just not fair. But how have you found it specifically in Cube? Because I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I thought, like, it's a fine value card. It will go in a reanimated deck as a way of getting your stuff into the graveyard, that kind of thing. But as we know, the card is stronger than that. But kind of like, how have you generally found it play in Cube specifically?
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. Like, these, if you play it on turn 2, it feels like they need to have a removal spell for it right away. And damage-based removal doesn't work. So they basically need like an exile removal spell or some sort of like Black Terror variant right now, because otherwise you're going to draw a card next turn. Trying to leave blockers back for this is not an effective strategy, because either you just kill the blocker and get through and get your cards and get that value train rolling, or if you don't have the removal, you're just going to discard cards and win the combat with the blocker. And then they're going to be in the same position next turn, but worse because your Frog is bigger. And you have the cards in the graveyard now to jump it if you need to. But the card's just kind of absurd. Like, there's no deck that could cast this card that I wouldn't put it in, you know? Really sick in the lowest deck as well, by the way. But
Jesus. Yeah, okay. Yeah, just get the cards back and keep. Yeah, that seems very strong. It seems like, so I think when I first saw this card, I definitely didn't appreciate just the Ophidian nature of just getting a card every turn, how that really just plays into it growing as well, because I'm someone who's actually played not a lot, but like I have the Psychotog, and that felt very. I think that's what I was comparing it to a bit too much. Like that felt very all in, where it's kind of just like, okay, I win now. Basically, it's like I'm just like I might win a combat early in the game, but generally I have a big turn. But because this puts counters on it specifically, you can kind of, I guess with this, you're getting value and winning combats with it over the course of a game rather than just having that one explosive turn. That was more what the original genesis of this card, Psychotog, was generally doing. Is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so the thing with Ophidians, right? Normally, but especially for the 2-mana one, they tend to be kind of understated, and the payoff is great if you can get them through and they work. But you'd expect them to be like, "Oh, die to all the removal," and they're not very good if your opponent has blockers. Yeah, even to like the good ones, right? Like Caustic Bronco, really strong card from this year, like it a lot. But it is just a 2/2 with no combat abilities, and costs you life, and it's worse in a million other ways. Psychic Frog, but Psychic Frog solves the blocker problem in and of itself. It's because if you can ditch cards to win combat, that's almost always good for you. Because you're not only you're getting your opponent's creature off the board now and for 0 mana, and it's whatever they play in the early turns of the game isn't going to be that much bigger. And then later in the game, you don't care about the blockers anyway, because your frog essentially has flying most of the time in the late game. It just asks so little of you to work, like it feels like your opponent really needs the like hard removal on the spot on turn 2. And that's, which is a very different test from something like Ragavan, right? Which is a great card, but it is like your opponent, any removal spell will work or blockers will work. Psychic Frog demands a specific class of removal right now. Because once you've got in, drawn your first card, then you have more cards to discard, the value train is rolling, you're digging to more removal, and if you untap and have counter spell up, it kind of just feels like it's over,
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, very strong card. And in a year where we've seen a lot of Magic cards, but a lot of very powerful Magic cards as well. I think Psychic Frog was a standout in terms of level above, and also it doesn't fit. I guess as well, like it doesn't feel kind of like the One Ring where it's just like generically good. There's games of Magic with this card as well, which is also nice to see. Last thing on this section, I think I'm the one person who voted for Pyrogoyf, but yeah, I'll concede Psychic Frog might be a stronger Magic card, but stick to your guns. But Bristly Bill was in this section. Oh, I'm so torn. But anyway, that is going to do it for the MTGs, and that is going to do it for 2024 for Powerful Nothing. Thank you all very much for listening to the podcast over the last year. We really appreciate your support. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you all very much. Do make sure to tell a friend, give the podcast a 5-star review, all that good stuff. Helps us do more cool and interesting things. James, thank you very much for the episode, and thank you very much for the past year. It's been awesome.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Dan. I'm looking forward to another good year of podcasting.
Yeah, I just like talking about Cube. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's pretty good. If anyone wants to listen to it, that's great too. But
that's a nice bonus. But yeah. Thank you for all your support on the podcast this year, James. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and yeah, long may it continue. All right, awesome. Well, that's going to do it for today. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James. And until next year, we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.